By now, you most likely know that Hasbro has laid off over 1,000 employees just a couple of weeks before Christmas, and that some of them were involved with Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons products. You might also know that Hasbro's CEO makes close to $10 million per year in income. It's another bad bit of PR for a company already troubled by other recent gaffes, including sending Pinkerton agents directly to the home of a Magic the Gathering content creator without warning in order to make legal threats. And very notably, the OGL controversy, which threatened to screw over third-party content creators. Now, our community isn't a monolith, so different people will have different feelings about these layoffs, but I know a lot of you are troubled by this, and maybe you're wondering, are they going to ruin the brand so much that people stop playing D&D? Will my beloved hobby suffer for this, or even disappear eventually? And if you're wondering what you can do about it, this video is for you. I'm Dave, and this is the one and only RPG Rundown. Something I've noticed about the Hasbro age of D&D is that a corporation of that size and type just chronically, pathologically seems to misunderstand the hobby game customer. When they tried to pull off the virtual destruction of the OGL, they seemed genuinely surprised it went over badly with fans. They sort of stood there in shock like a cartoon character whose bomb accidentally went off in their face. And they continued to handle it badly until they finally just capitulated. I think it just doesn't and can't register to a company like that ruthless cuts and solely worshiping the bottom line in the name of relentless value isn't always what their customers want. You see, a huge chunk of us TTRPG gamers care about how the sausage is made. We care about the health of the game, the well-being of the people involved, and above all, the community surrounding the product. About the future of the hobby. We aren't looking for the cheapest set of tires or a better price on rechargeable batteries no matter the consequences. No, we want it to be good for everybody, not just the shareholders. Whereas fascination with Transformers toys comes and goes with kids, and even something like Play-Doh turns out not to be a timeless plaything, I have a feeling passionate RPG players are here for a very long haul as customers. Now, do I recognize that nonetheless, a company like Hasbro has to deal with shareholders? Sure, absolutely. They are utterly beholden to them. But I still think their misunderstanding of their own customer base is a problem, and ultimately, maybe a problem for those shareholders. So ideally, they'd figure out how to explain the uniqueness of their customer base to those shareholders. They'd really attempt to balance the needs of both groups. But maybe they do know. Maybe they do understand, but they just can't strike that balance. I definitely don't pretend to know what it's like to run a company like that, and it's easy for me to play Monday morning quarterback, I know. I also don't claim to understand economics at any kind of expert level. But it sure does seem like, when D&D players vehemently protested the OGL changes, those OGL changes faded away. There was a viral protest in the form of people canceling their D&D Beyond subscriptions, and I don't know if that was responsible for the walk back on the changes, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it played a big part. As I've said about these things, I can only make mildly informed guesses, but there is something I do know. There are other publishers and other games out there. Maybe D&D is the only tabletop fantasy role-playing game you've played. Maybe the prospect of learning another whole system seems daunting. I totally get that, but it's not as hard as you might think to try out another system. The majority of fantasy RPGs use a pretty familiar D20 to hit mechanic. They're not completely different from D&D, but more like variations on a theme. Some of those variations are more complex, and some are simpler, and some are just different. If you feel like trying out something with more rules and nuance, give Pathfinder a look. It's very similar to the core D&D game, but offers something closer to the rules crunch of 3rd edition and 3.5. In fact, Pathfinder began as a spiritual continuation of 3.5. It's now in its second remaster of its 2nd edition, and has grown further into its own game, but the D&D roots are solid and clear, and much of it will seem familiar to you. If you want to try something a little bit rules lighter, check out Dragonbane. It was Sweden's first and biggest tabletop fantasy RPG, debuting in 1982. Free League has a brand new, completely revamped English language version of the game. It's pretty similar to D&D and uses D20 for combat and actions, but it is a roll-low system in case that matters to you. There's also a completely new game being developed by Matt Colville. See, I pronounced his name right this time. Check out the videos from Matt Scoville. It too is inspired by D&D, but is streamlined to cater to heroic fantasy themes, a cinematic feel, and tactical play. If you really want to lean into the crunch, though, there are fantastic games that do that, like Harnmaster and Hackmaster. On the other hand, if you want to explore the other direction and find rules light options, take a look at games like Shadowdark. Shadowdark is relatively simple and tailored toward an old school feel of fantasy gaming. There are plenty of others too. If you really want to dabble in what's out there, it's all just a Google search away. Am I trying to bury D&D or single-handedly organize a boycott? Certainly not. I hope Hasbro figures this out. I want them to do well. I want employees not to lose their jobs. D&D is good for the hobby, and I want it to continue to exist. But you don't have to feel like your gaming fate is tied to one company and its business model, or to one game and its nuances. Branch out. See what's there. In the meantime, if Hasbro feels a slowdown in what turns out to be their best division, WotC, because of consumer sentiment once again turning away from them, maybe it's a message they'll get. I hope they do. Leave a comment and tell me what you think. Have you played any of the games I mentioned, and what did you think of those? Are there other fantasy RPGs you've played and liked? Let me know. Like and subscribe and all that, and until next time, may all your 20s be natural. Viral. A viral protest.